It's a weekend. We're back from Utah. Well, we've been back. It's the first weekend since Utah. And every time I get back from any sort of tournament or thing that tests my ability to play basketball, I like to go back to the drawing board and try and figure out what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I need to work on. One of the big takeaways for myself after reviewing kind of the training block leading up to this is I need to lift a little bit heavier. I haven't done that because I had some knee issues, which happily are getting resolved and much better. That was like in Chicago, it bothered me, and then I didn't really fully rehab it, and some weird stuff came up, but that's neither here nor there. The second part is sprinting. I need to sprint more. More importantly, short distance acceleration. When I'm playing basketball and I drive to the hoop and I go do basketball related things, like you see this little movement here where I have a kind of a stop and go or a twitch step or a shimmy step, the ability to push, explode, and accelerate out of that position is something that I want to get better at. That's something I want to improve. And so instead of just doing it on the court over and over again, I wanted to find ways to isolate it in training without a basketball. And so if I can train it without a basketball at maximal intensity, I know my skill of ball handling won't limit me. Because if you're learning something new or something you're not good at, or as good as you want to be, and you add the basketball component into it, at times you resort to basketball things you're good at. And so I'm not good at accelerating out of that position. And I go and compete in basketball. I'm not going to default to doing the thing I'm not very good at. But if I remove the basketball and I practice some of those positions and some of those positions I get stronger at, and I'm comfortable being fast and accelerating out of it, well then when I go play basketball and I go and try and do it, first off, I won't be as slow as I once was, but secondly, I'll probably be a lot stronger in those positions and therefore more comfortable to do it. Now, one thing I did notice was my right leg was much slower than my left. So like when I pushed off my right and rolled through my right leg, it was much worse than expected. That's good to know. That means something I can get better at. Secondly, my mobility kind of stinks. I don't really talk about it much in this video in terms of stretching, but since traveling and playing as much basketball, my mobility is not very good. And I do think it limits some of the positions I can get in. And so I have been working a lot on glute mobility, specifically my hamstrings. So something like touching your toes. I can't really come close to touching my toes. For most athletes, I don't think mobility is a huge issue. I don't think most athletes are as immobile as myself. So we're going to work on that a little bit. Oh, here's a cool exercise I wanted to show you.
So mid-workout right here, but I wanted to show this with you all. Whew! Just did a couple sets of these. This is from Powerlift. Now, a lot of times I like machines because they allow you to get into positions that barbells and free weights don't necessarily let you. I also use barbells and free weights, so don't get it twisted. Use a tool that works best for you. Now, what I like about this is the motion of this. Think about the arc. It's going to go down and back. So there's a little bit of a horizontal component coming down during that deceleration portion. This feels a lot like when you step into a jump. Because when you step into a jump, you have forward torso, inertia going down. You got to decelerate that and jump back up. I like a trap bar as an alternative to this, but the reality is the trap bar, there's a lot of sway and play with that arm because A, your arms are swinging, but B, it's going to be following the line of gravity, which is straight up and down. These are fixed, so no matter what you do, the weight's going to fall one way or exactly the same way every time. Whew, let's get right to it. I'll show you guys what I'm doing here. So, like a rhythm squat with a trap bar, and that was the world's worst pickup, so I apologize for all you form critics out there. Bend your knees next time. See how I start a little bit back, almost lean forward, and I can sink into it. Let me find a good foot position here. Cool. Down, up. So it's forward, break. You notice this bottom position. It's a lot like that loading position of a jump. And I can really drop into it. It's adding that little horizontal motion, which seems to make a world of a difference in terms of comfort and loading. Ooh, that's not easy. That's a dope exercise. So again, a little bit of that pitching forward. If I was just doing a standing vertical jump, right, you'd be here, down and up. When I have any approach, have a little bit of forward momentum, arm swing and up. So this is like that reversal position right here having it explode up after decelerating that torso going forward. Whew, I'm out of breath. So a little exercise breakdown for you all and why I like this machine.
And as I mentioned earlier, I want to lift heavier. And I don't just want to jump right into something heavy in terms of just like the most amount of weight I can possibly lift. I want to work on something that controls my positioning. And I used to do a little bit more of these than I have done recently, and I'll do more now. It's just some heavy controlled eccentric squats. Now I'm trying to go comfortably down into a position that's basically at parallel. I really want to feel my quads work. Remember, coming back off of a little bit of a knee injury, so I'm not going to go crazy in terms of weight here. I have my hands acting as assistants, so if there's a point in time where I feel like the weight is just too much, or getting out of the bottom position is too much, or I'm losing stability, my hands can come in and help me. I did this for about 4 sets, and I think the second set that you see here is much slower than the first set. I almost think about 5 to 7 seconds on the way down. That seems to be good for me. Constant tension, not too slow though. Sometimes if you go too slow, secondary muscles that are involved in this movement really get mad. So it's really easy for you to piss off your low back if you do a really heavy back squat. And you're so focused on the control down that you don't realize that, yes, you're lowering the weight so your legs aren't working maximally, but your low back is still posturally working to hold that weight on your back. So you might say, oh, I'm only doing, 375 pounds. That's not horribly heavy for me. But the reality is there's a large time under tension and postural demand of the low back to maintain that position. So again, super easy to work some of those secondary muscles in a way that you didn't expect. So as always, please be careful. And I mentioned some of my mobility woes. So I'm not just a guy who only likes to stretch, right? I think if you just stretch, you might access that range of motion, but now what do you do with it? So I'm thinking about, okay, some of those postures I get in basketball that I want to be low and accelerate through, can I train those with some sort of strength training? So these are those over-exaggerated Bulgarian split squats you see here, really bent over, really stretching the glutes, long split stance position. This is pretty tough. The weight is not much, but the demand is pretty high. I'll be adding these in, and something I will add more weight to as I get stronger and more comfortable through these deeper ranges of motion. So just some updates for you all.